it all starts, with your background colors. I always tell my clients not to get a heart attack when they see the background color.
Welcome back to Artfully Crafted. My name is Alienor, and each week I travel to a craftsperson's studio, interview them and show you their work. This week we're headed to a small village just outside of Salisbury to meet with decorative painter Magda Gordon. I first came across Magda's work during my time at the World of Interiors. I then started following her on Instagram and was totally hooked. Wood graining, tortoise shell, faux marbling, trompe-l'oeil, gilding, she really does it all. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button and let's get into it. Hi Magda.
Hi.
Thank you so much thank you to you and Floppy for having me.
You're welcome.
Floppy is actually the star of the show.
She is.
So we are in your delightful cottage in a beautiful village just outside of Salisbury.
Yes, we are.
And we're surrounded by lots of examples of your work.
Yes.
So you're a decorative painter. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that means, what that entails?
So I am a decorative painter, like you said, and I specialize in, first of all, imitations of marbles, wood graining.
We have, this is
my box for oil paint that I use on various job sites.
Yeah. And it's got wood graining, and is it tortoiseshell?
It's tortoiseshell as well as rosewood. It's actually inspired by one of the projects I've done in the past, and I liked it so much that I decided to replicate it on my own personal belonging. I also specialize in ornamental painting, in trompe-l'oeil, grisaille, gilding and other traditional painting techniques.
All magical words to me.
Yes.
And we do have, so what is this, grisaille? Or?
This is grisaille. This is actually a sample for one of the projects I'm kind of getting to work on quite soon. It's inspired by Etruscan or neoclassical style of ornaments, and everything is done in grey palette, which you can see. Yes.
Oh yeah,
This is another sample that I've been working on for some time, but this is a sample for ornaments in French style. So that would be the arabesques that involve a lot of colorful palette, a lot of flowers, a lot of, well, basically the ornamental style is based on acanthus leaf, the acanthus leaf. So yeah, this is just a tiny little sample that will then be enlarged onto much bigger panels. But it's very helpful to establish, your basic color palette, working on something small.
And the style of composition and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think what else I have around me. This is a sort of much more simple kind of repeat, right?
Yes. So this is a sample done for a project that unfortunately didn't get the go-ahead, unfortunately, but it's based on a beautiful bed, the so-called Garrick bed, that can be seen at the V&A in London. It's actually upside down.
Oh, sorry.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I just was thinking, if I had a penny for every time someone mentions the V&A, like,
Okay.
I think I haven't had a single interview
Right.
where someone hasn't mentioned the V&A.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, it's incredible because, you know, the whole reason why it was, you know, why the V&A was started was to inspire designers in the
it's
UK.
it's like a huge library of, you know, your decorative references throughout the centuries, really. It's a brilliant resource for all of us, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
And then, what else do we have? I feel like the samples, I think that's something we'll have to return to later to kind of talk about that process of things, not kind of going forward.
This again is, so this is a sample for a cabinet for one of the shops in London. So it will be on display for everyone to see.
That's something as well, like, because we're seeing things on a small scale on samples.
Yes.
But really, you can apply this to furniture. You can, and when we say furniture, like, you can paint directly on furniture, but you could also do on panels that can then be applied to furniture.
Yes.
You can work on walls, or you could even be painting on canvas or paper to then go on walls.
Yes.
Same thing goes for ceilings. I mean, it's basically like any surface.
Yes, absolutely. I can work on absolutely anything and everything. I've worked on floors, I've worked on ceilings, I've worked on various furniture, and then I am very happy to accommodate my clients' wishes, you know, and for instance, there are some people who would want to take the artwork with them once they move, in which case I've worked on a canvas, you know, that could be easily taken to a new place.
And that's actually something that, I can't remember, I think, it's Brighton Pavilion. A lot of chinoiserie wallpapers were backed onto canvas.
Yes.
And then they could be removed, rolled up, and then they've been, like, you know, not applied, installed at Buckingham Palace, for example. And, like, I think that's lots of ways in which people don't realise that you can invest in decorative art in that way and it can move with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is wonderful.
Yes.
What is...
This is a sample of tortoiseshell. This is something that I've done so many times now. I think this is one of the most popular finishes. And, you know, it's a very, very sweet reminder of very lovely projects that I've done, you know, using this one particular sample. You, like, working on various job sites for various clients, you know, unfortunately, I can't, there is always a moment where I have to let go of that project. But what's left over is a sample, you know, and yeah, it's a very nice thing to have in my own archive.
Yeah. And so actually, who are your clients?
So predominantly, I tend to work for interior designers or interior architects. But over the past couple of years or so, I've started getting more and more commissions from private clients. Directly, yes, yeah. I can't say which one I prefer. I think that I try to approach every project like a completely new thing, and but there are differences between, you know, working for somebody who is an interior designer and, let's say, a private client. You know? Do
you want to delve into what those differences are?
Yes. So working for interior designers allows me presents every instance presents me with different set of opportunities and limitations. Working for interior designers is great because I don't really have to deal with clients as much, which is not a bad thing at all. But
I guess in a way it's like in an ideal world, an interior designer understands your work, understands what you need, and understand the intricacies of what you do, and so the collaboration can be a lot more straightforward.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas with a private client, there's a whole phase of needing to like educate the client to what you do first.
Yes, absolutely.
So I guess like it's not that one dislikes working with private clients, but it's more like, in a way, it takes more time and energy, because in a way, like, the interior designer is that middle person that will do the educating for you, right?
Yes, and provides a buffer between me and the client. At the same time, working for private clients directly, I think, can be and tends to be a lot more creative, and from the projects that I've done in the past, I think it provides me with much more freedom in a way than working for interior designer, because you know, there is a color scheme, there is a theme, there is the style of the interior designer. And
the interior designer has an image of what they want.
Absolutely, and obviously, at the end of the day, it's always about a compromise, and also, you know, I always try to get the best idea of what they intend to do as I can. But at the end of the day, you know, I can only do as much as interpret their, you know, wishes and translate them into using my own skills. So in a way, that's quite that can be quite complicated and quite tricky. And if somebody doesn't enjoy, you know, problem solving, that might be quite off-putting. On the other hand, I feel like with private clients, there is much more freedom to actually, you know, remain faithful to your own ideas and sense of aesthetics.
And be quite playful and maybe try new things, I guess, right?
Yes.
You can sort of, you know, because I think with an interior designer, the interior designer will sell their vision to the client, and then they're executing that vision. Whereas with the private client, you're sort of brought on at a stage where you can develop those ideas together.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I do think that both relationships quite be equally fulfilling, I think, you know.
Yeah. It's nice to have both in a way, I guess. So
yes,
you can,
absolutely.
I think if you had only private clients, that might be quite taxing, I guess, in terms of, because it does require a lot more in terms of managing that relationship.
Yes.
But equally, if you're only working with interior designers and you're only ever working in the style of a particular person,
yes,
so you
absolutely.
need both to sort of feed your practice, right?
Absolutely, and it's not always possible for you to actually, you know, remain this individual who actually creates things, because you then are just co-opted, you know, you're a small part of this, you know, world that somebody has created, and does not necessarily mean that you can, you know, share your work under your own name.
Yes.
Or very often you see, after a very long time, you see those projects featured in you know, magazines and stuff like this, and
you're not mentioned necessarily.
You don't get credited for very often very long and, you know, time-consuming work.
And I guess actually we can, so one interior design duo with whom you've collaborated and who have been very supportive in sharing your work and sharing who you are is Campbell Ray.
Yes,
and I feel like that's quite a good project to talk about, as you did a mural for them recently.
I did. My assistant and we were given an opportunity to work on a terrace at a private members club in Piccadilly Circus in London. And that was a great project. Always enjoy working with Camel and Ray. We created this beautiful Arcadian English landscape, very loosely painted. But it does actually tell a story. As you walk around the room, there are certain elements within the landscape that attract your attention. And that was complemented with another great opportunity to show off our skills, which was imitation of marble painted on the cornice and all of those wooden elements, architectural elements of the room that are actually hiding guttering in the room. So
and I think that's the thing, you know, people are always like, oh, like, why would you use, you know, decorative painting when you can just use marble or use this or whatever? And I'm like, well, actually, you can't always use those materials, whether because it's weight or because it's the condition of the room. Or
because it's extinct.
Yeah, exactly. Or because of the cost or whatever it might be. And actually, to use decorative painting in the way that you're able to do, it gives so much creative freedom.
Absolutely.
You can bring things to life that don't even exist, you know? I've got a bit of foam marbling in my kitchen, and it's like the colours are not like, it doesn't exist in real marble, you know? I just picked like turquoise and peach. It's like
it's my favourite type of marble. It's called fantasy marble.
Exactly.
It's a very cheesy name, but it's actually
so it's like imagination is the limit in that sense. And so that is the reason why you would want to use decorative painting, is if you want to be completely unshackled from the realities of materials, I guess, in a way.
Yes, absolutely agree. And very often, you know, artists throughout the centuries were employed to always enhance the interior or the exterior of a building. Because of their keen eye, and, you know, even in the past where, you know, the money was not an object. If you were wealthy, you know, a wealthy person, a king, for instance. But
also like a temperature, you know, like it's one thing to use marble in a palazzo in Italy, but in, you know, cold, drafty, rainy England, I'd much rather have a faux marble.
Absolutely. But it's very funny because I've always been aware of this art of marbling and wood graining. I suppose not many people actually are aware of this sort of thing existing. But actually, for me also, it was once I got this idea that this is what I wanted to do for a living. You know, I started really looking at things, visiting various stately homes, you know, in England, or various chateaus in France. And it's really interesting once you start noticing is that it's usually the first room you walk into, which would be the hallway or the most representative room that will get the full, you know, the real material. The rest of the rooms, it's usually all faux.
But then again, like, you visit Pitzhanger Manor in Ealing, and it's like, you know, designed by Sir John Soane, and that first room is all faux marble, and it's such a stunning, really visually impactful effect.
Yes, it's quite interesting. I was recently reading about you know, Fontainebleau and boudoir of Marie-Antoinette, and it's a really, really beautiful room with ornamental panels painted using
that makes sense. You have been talking about doing the Marie-Antoinette. I feel like you're on a theme at the moment.
I'm absolutely obsessed with that. But you go to the room and you have the panels all over the room. You have the beautiful sky on the ceiling. You have the mirrors, and the person who designed the room decided to punctuate the entire room with wooden doors made out of mahogany, but he chose to have the mahogany painted. So even though, you know, it's mahogany is not really material that is scarce, and that says something about the artistic value that decorative painting, you know, imitations actually adds. It just enhances the artistic value, it's really something, I think.
Whilst on the topic of Marie-Antoinette, I wanted to bring up another, and actually this is a project that's, you're working directly with the clients, but it's also not really a private client, it's your collaboration with Choosing Keeping.
Yes.
Julia, who is the owner, I feel like you two have developed a close working relationship.
Yes, we have. Yes, Julia and I, we've been working for some time now together. We usually do one thing a year, which is Choosing Keeping's Christmas window that we started. I think the first one was during the lockdown. We did together, and that was it was quite simple. I did this snowy alpine landscape. That was just a backdrop for, it was absolutely fantastic. I think they were German or Swiss little chalets, miniature houses. And then the next year we did Christmas window based on a theme of Georgian dummies, Georgian dummy boards that were very sweet. There was a boy and a girl and a little plinth with a cat. And we did a few things after that together, but last year it was Marie-Antoinette. It was a huge success.
Did that window start your current wave of interest in Marie-Antoinette, or was it actually you who pitched Marie-Antoinette?
I've been always aware of Marie-Antoinette, and I am really in awe with the French school of decorative painting and painting in general. But I really started reading extensively about Marie-Antoinette prior to our collaboration. And it was very fascinating to learn so much about her, and very frustrating at the same time, because it's such a complex figure. And actually, the more you learn about her, the more aware you get how little you actually know about, you know, both that period of time, the court, Marie-Antoinette, it's herself, you know, and society in general on the whole.
Yeah, there's so much to sort of dig into. And actually, we talked briefly about the V&A earlier, and there's going to be a Marie-Antoinette V&A exhibition, which I'm so looking forward to.
Absolutely, yes.
That's going to be, because their exhibitions are always so fantastic, and I think, there's definitely interest there.
Yes, the craze continues.
If anyone from the V&A is watching, we welcome preview tickets.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
And then another project, I think they are private clients technically, but they are antique dealers, so they are in the industry. It's quite I think you said it's a historically inspired project.
Yes, I've done, well, the majority of the projects that I've worked on is historically informed and inspired. One of the projects of mine that I really enjoyed was a master bathroom for my private clients at their house. That was actually inspired by this really beautiful ebonized Dutch cabinet with beautiful tortoiseshell inlay in the little drawers. That was a piece of furniture that stood there in the corner in of their house. And I thought, and I got encouraged by the clients to actually explore this little Dutch avenue of possibilities and maybe do something about that, create a theme.
I see. So they actually, like, you sort of agreed on the starting point, but then
Yes.
it gave you freedom to kind of see where it would take you.
Yes. So that was very interesting, actually. I worked there. I worked on this room just by myself, even though the bathroom is definitely much bigger than my entire cottage, probably. I painted everything. So I painted the walls. That was the red tortoiseshell. That was very challenging to paint, but I did it. And then on the woodwork, on the dado, on beautiful Georgian window frames, doors, architraves, the cornice, I painted imitation of rosewood, ebonized rosewood. And then I painted beautiful trompe-l'oeil coffered ceiling on the ceiling that was supposed to look three-dimensional on a completely flat surface.
Yeah. And so you achieved that by doing sort of like lines of shadows.
Yes, shadows and highlights.
But it's really complicated. You've got to, very work out, like,
it's very
where's the light coming from. And
yes. It's not as obvious as it seems.
No.
Nothing's obvious.
No.
Yes, that was challenging, but I did it, and it looks spectacular. If I might say so
if
much.
I may say so myself.
I'm very proud. I'm very, very proud of this room. But yes, it all starts, with your background colors. I always tell my clients not to get a heart attack when they see the background color.
Yeah, I think that was something that we wanted to bring up, because can you tell us what the background color is for this?
It's actually yellow.
Yeah. So this is like a green tortoiseshell effect, right?
Yes, yes.
But your starting point is a yellow, which is totally unexpected.
It is.
And so obviously if you've agreed on this being the sample, and then you see Magda painting yellow, you might be forgiven for having a little freak out.
Yes.
But that's
exactly.
where the trust comes in, it's trusting the process.
Yes.
And
I do try to talk my clients through my process as much as I can.
But I think it gets to the point where, like, because I think we haven't even talked about yet your education, like what you've done to get to this level of specialism. But I think just in the few minutes that we've been speaking, it's very obvious to the audience that you've got a huge amount of knowledge of, the technique, for historical context, etc. And I think sometimes for someone like you, you're so in that world, and it's become so second nature that to you it's obvious that there's yellow underneath. And so it might, as much as you try to share some of the process and it's, you might forget that it's not so obvious, and that's only human. And I guess that's also where working with an interior designer, that's why it's a little bit easier, because actually the interior designer will do that process of explaining to the client and sort of, managing that. Whereas,
or it removes the client almost entirely from the project if the interior designer, has got a total control of the project, which is very often the case, right?
So I think a private client who works with you has to be, has to work with trust.
Yes, absolutely.
And, give you some freedom to interpret what they want and to execute it.
And also I think that, I do have some knowledge. I try to work on that. I try to expand my knowledge. I try to be, as historically accurate in my work. But at the same time, very often I would say yes to a project. But then I would have to figure things out from scratch, because every project is completely different. You never know what problems you will encounter. You work in a period property. You have to adapt and learn very quickly. So.
So maybe let's get into, the everything that's. Oh, she's like a little baby being carried.
She's a good cat.
She's so cute. But yeah, so you've done kind of 3, I'm sure you've probably done lots of other sort of like informal training or short courses, but there's sort of like 3 main phases of your training. Is first you studied in Poland, doing classical painting, is that right?
I did classical painting. I studied painting for about 6 years.
Was that more sort of like portraiture?
That was very also very intense course. It was at the Academy of Arts in Poland, where you get a very thorough education. So we did sculpture, we did drawing, we did painting, we did composition, we did traditional graphic techniques, you name it, we did it. So yeah, that was, but that was definitely based around, centers around portraiture and, life size, full studies, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
And then I studied conservation of easel paintings and frames here in England. And that was a completely different experience. I never wanted to become an art conservator. For me, that was more learning how to paint, but from the other way around.
So by copying the work of others.
By trying to find out how things are painted. It was a very eye-opening study with regards to color palettes. I've learned to see colors because you have to be very particular. Thankfully, everything that you do as an art conservator has to be reversible.
Yeah. But I think that's something that often surprises people. But when you go into work of like restoration and conservation, you're really learning almost by from the person whose work you're restoring, by seeing how they did things, the decisions they made. And so like, if you're working on a painting by Rembrandt, like in a way it's almost like you're learning from Rembrandt, because you're having to look so closely and analyze the pigments they were using, etc. And so that kind of takes your practice to the next level, right?
It's really it was really an eye-opening experience for me, and it just contributed to my knowledge about
and to that your
painting.
Historical approach, right?
Yes, and also I for me tradition is very, very important. I cannot emphasize that strongly enough. So yeah, that was a great step for me. I also had a really wonderful teacher who spotted how good with colors I was, and she trusted me enough to employ me then at her workshop, and I did work on this absolutely amazing painting by Murillo, or of his workshop, that now can be seen in a church in Ireland, I think.
Amazing.
Or at Louvre, which actually has the original painting.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really special.
Yes.
Yeah, those sorts of like informal mentorship, that's, I think, really important to people in the creative industries and to crafts in particular.
absolutely.
And then you went to Belgium for a little bit as well.
Yes, and then in the meantime, I met somebody who, in passing, mentioned the name of the school in Brussels. The school is called Van der Kelen. School of Decorative Painting. I went there. I arranged an interview with Madame Denise van der Kelen, who runs the school, I think still. And then I enrolled, and the following.
So this is where you actually learnt like all of the sort of wood graining and the foam marbling and all of it, yes. Gilding, etc.
Yes. Van der Kelen is a very traditional school, and they have very strict methods of teaching. They teach how to paint imitations of, I can't remember the exact number, but it's definitely more than 70 types of wood graining. Wow. Same goes with marbling. So you are being introduced to pretty much every material imaginable. So
that sounds dizzying, because you said the course is you said to me off camera, I think it's like 9 months, right?
Yes.
So I mean 9 months you're already saying wood graining like 70 different types.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very intense. It's very intense, and you work simultaneously on, I don't know, 3 to 5 panels, and they are quite generously sized, and you
so it pushes your speed as well, right?
Pushes your speed, pushes you to the limits. You are taught how to juggle things, you know, how to mentally switch from one thing to another one, which is something that I think is the most difficult thing for me, you know, because I tend to dwell on a thing for a very long time, and that absolutely takes over my life, whereas in that school I was just,
push you to get beyond that.
Yes, forced me to definitely work on that.
So you would say that, so they were great in terms of teaching you like technique, work ethic, speed, and like mental agility in a way.
Yes.
But then they don't teach you like the business side of things, right?
Yes. I mean, obviously, I think this is the ethos of the school. How much you're going to take from that is up to you, you know. It's like there were various attitude amongst us, and that also something that fluctuates throughout the course, because it's very, very mentally taxing. When you graduate, you have a very decent set of skills that can be used straight away. But like you said, the business side of things, the more practical knowledge is unfortunately not taught there.
Oh yes, I think again off camera you mentioned to me something about like adapting to sites, like that's not necessarily like you're taught in like one type of paint.
Yes.
But then actually when you go to sites you can't use any paints, you have to choose paints based on what your substrate is going to be, right?
Yes, or health and safety regulations, or the fact that maybe your client is just about to have a baby and she can't have, turpentine fumes in her bedroom or the child's bedroom. That's not ideal.
So actually you've had to sort of learn to research these things yourself afterwards.
Yes, and that was a huge shock.
So it was a really, really good foundation.
Yes.
But it's not like they teach you absolutely everything from A to Z. But I guess you wouldn't expect in a 9 months course, it's not really possible to cover like every aspect of it.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
But a good thing to do nonetheless.
Yes, but in a way, I think that it promotes this kind of like old-fashioned way of establishing your practice as an artist or a decorative artist. It's good because to begin with, you would seek out mentorship from other people. You would want to work for somebody else rather than jumping into the risky world of self-employment.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, like what's the pros and cons, like working for others versus working for yourself, right? Because like no situation is going to be like perfect, right?
No. I think it's important to remember what your end goal is. I don't know. I think it depends so much on like your life circumstances, on your type of personality.
I was about to say, I think that's like if you're someone who, for example, can do well with like handling like risk in terms of coping with uncertainty and ambiguity or whatever, then you might do quite well being self-employed. Whereas if you like sort of the regularity and like safety of employment, then working for others is maybe suits your mindset more, right?
Yes, yeah. I think also I would add that some people like me, I was very particular about the type of projects that I wanted to be getting, and in as much as I remain very appreciative with regards to what I've been taught, because I did go through working for a couple of companies, one in Europe and one over in the United States. I was very particular about what I wanted to do, and having gained this basic level of understanding, how things work in situ, what is to be expected if you work in a period property. I then was able to start working for myself.
Well, I guess that's the thing, you're trading. If you're working for someone else, you're working, like, as we said, the advantage is that you've got that security, you're not having to deal with the interior designers or the private clients directly, and you've got sort of steady work, but then the downside is you don't have like much of the creative freedom. You can't pick you can't pick the projects. So whereas working for yourself, like you're the one who's having to find other people who are going to work under you, and they might not be working at the same speed as you, you've got to manage. You're then managing the client and your employees or subcontractors. So it's like you're dealing with a lot of personalities. So you might have like more control over the creative process, but actually you're probably spending less time actually painting and more time managing.
So it's like, absolutely.
It's you basically as an individual have to choose like what your preferences are, and there's a bit of give and take in whichever scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's always a compromise, no matter what you do.
But you've set up your own company called Atma.
I did set up my own company called Atma, and I still have grand plans for it. Yes, I do, big projects, small projects, and I can have as many assistants as I want, really, depending on the size of the projects.
What's been your biggest team to date on projects that you've organised?
I did this one project in Monaco, actually, and I did have 5 people working for me on that project, and yes,
Yeah, so at that point you're doing all the meetings with the interior designer or the client. You're doing the sort of like developing the sample and establishing the concept, and you're doing all of the estimating. But then when it comes to actually going to site, you then have organised to have a team coming out with you to carry out the vision, right?
Yeah. This is exactly how it works. And then obviously my main task was to supervise my work as well as my assistant's work, so that we are on time with everything.
So you're also doing the timelines and everything else. So it's quite a lot of logistics at that point.
Yes, absolutely. Thankfully, with that project, it was actually quite a few elements went into it. So there was some gilding, there was some decorative painting, there was some decorative painting that is a little bit less, involved. So yeah, thankfully everything went well. There are other projects that can be quite a little bit more tricky, because then you have to supervise not only how fast people work, but also you have to make sure that the level of their skills, are kind of consistent.
Cohesive with everybody else, right? You don't want to have someone working on one part of the room, someone working on another, and then be like, oh, actually, like your faux marble is like different densities or different scales.
That's the most difficult thing. And I've noticed from my experience working for other people, it still is that the final touches, or even the most the parts of the job in the most representative or visible
visually
spots, impactful are still done by by the head of the company, because it's very funny, like we were taught at school, you have a marble, you paint an imitation of marble, and there are many components to how marble is created. So the way you paint it reflects, not just the color palette, but also the composition and structure of marble, and you have very, very different types of marble, but most of them, even though the structure differs quite a lot from marble to marble, all of them have the so-called break lines, which are usually white or off-white, and you can see them on top of various marble slabs. And in the past, the break lines were the most important part of an imitation of marble, and you could recognize who painted what marble, because that was like the decorative painter's signature, so
I see.
the final touches are very, very important.
Well, again, going back to Rembrandt's, like all of like the old masters, like they would have had a whole studio of like apprentices, etc., different people doing different parts, and then they would do the sort of finishing touches, the stuff that, as you say, is like their signature style, and like only maybe the last elements are by their hand, even though the whole thing is by their studio. And so that works in the same way for you, right?
Yes, yeah. Or like the most important, things like hands or eyes.
The most expressive.
Yes, absolutely.
And so can you take us, so earlier we did, I can't remember which sample it was, I think there was one of the samples, this one, for example, where, you said, was it this way?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. I got it right this time.
It's a canopy. It's a canopy on top of the bed.
Oh, wonderful. Yes. But so you said this didn't go ahead.
No, it didn't.
And then, but that one did go ahead, and now the sample is kind of like your reminder of that project. But so you could be pitching for different projects and it might not necessarily go ahead. And I just wondered, we've also talked about like managing expectations. You start with the yellow and then it's going towards the green, etc. Can you just, give an overview for what is the process like?
Every instance is different. I get approached by many people about many different things, and usually it starts with a general inquiry whether I am either interested in working on something or what my availability is for the coming year, let's say.
Yeah.
Then they go into explaining what the project involves. And again, sometimes people have, people are very specific with what they want, which in a way is the easiest thing for me to do, because I don't really have to think or worry about anything, everything is pretty straightforward. But usually it's a little bit more complicated than that. They give me a set of ideas, what they were thinking. Then I put my thinking cap on and I try to understand that. I try to ask them for general idea or feel of the room, of the space, that is being created.
Yeah, I mean, someone could come to you with like an inspiration of like maybe they've seen a room that they really love, or it could be that they like a particular marble, or like anything can be a starting point, right? Like in a way, you will adapt to them and whatever information they give you, and then you will let them know what other information you need, right?
Yes, absolutely. I always try to kind of steer things my way a little bit. So I always try to also introduce some of my ideas, and then we can work on a compromise. Then the next step would be to have like a proper mood board, with proper examples of things, maybe things highlighted, because every reference image would, could include various elements that, you like, and elements that you don't really like.
And it's important for you to have a sense of the whole room, like what, how it's going to be used, the layout for different, if other decorative elements have already been decided, like what are those?
Yes, absolutely.
You're not going to work in isolation when you're planning a whole temple ceiling,
Yeah, absolutely. And then once I think that we both have an idea of what it is that is expected of me, then I would proceed with a sample. And usually I would limit myself to like 1 or 2 or 3 samples per project. It's not really, I don't tend to inundate people with samples.
Yeah. I mean, I'm guessing you'll have like a sketch of the overall composition, not to scale, right? Oh, you don't?
I don't really do sketch.
Okay.
I have to say I'm not a big fan of sketching things out. I would rather.
Do you think that kind of limits you then in the execution?
I think it does limit me a little bit, but then I also think that I can't really understand the space very well looking at just a little piece of paper.
Yeah.
So I think I can
so actually the sample is important in working out like the scale, the colour palette and the finish, and then that's what you'll use as your...
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's also, so I do 2 types of work, I think. So one is imitations, right? That is very easy because the sample, like you said, it specifies the color palette, it specifies the scale, it specifies the key elements that need to be included in the actual finish in situ. So that's pretty straightforward, and I like for that to be as precise as possible. Obviously, a size is, let's say, A4, but then when you're working on a entire room, that presents you with a another.
You're going to have variety
You will
in the
have
finish,
a variety.
etc. But you want to give a sense of what it will be overall.
You want to be consistent. You want to stay true to the sample. Whereas other work like trompe-l'oeil, that was something that I painted recently for a private client. That was just based loosely on a very, very, very simple sketch of trophies, and then the main trompe-l'oeil.
Floppy's unhappy.
She just needs to change her position.
There you go.
And basically, I just told the client that I will try. Well, I was going to paint it in the Dutch style, and they kind of trusted me with the process, you know, and I didn't have to prepare like a proper sketch for that, you know. And anyway, they can see how things unfold. So,
well, yeah, but you know, if you're starting with the yellow underlayer,
that's true. That's true. That's very true.
But yeah, okay, that's great. So, what is, you know, you've talked about being particular about what projects you choose, and only really having a certain number of projects a year. I think, how many projects did you say? Because you're trying to keep things so that you can be very hands-on with the project, right? So you can be involved with the design, with the sample, and then you can yourself actually be on site. So that, you know, if you're doing sort of large projects, then you're really only going to have time for like 10 or so a year, right?
Yes, and
like,
I would say
realistically.
Yeah, I would say this is I get involved in approximately 10 projects per year. I think this is realistic, you know, a number for me.
Does she want to come over to me? Do you want to come over? Do you want to come here?
You could go.
Yeah? Okay. There we go. Hello, Missy. So,
You could go.
she's so funny. She's got the little like punk hairdo going on. So could you tell me about the style of projects that you want to do more of, like sort of, you know, aspirational, like dream commission kind of thing?
My dream commission. I will be continuing my mission to use all those beautiful traditional painting techniques that I've learned in Belgium. I don't live in London anymore, and I do have a little workshop here in my cottage, which means that I would like to focus a little bit more on painted panels, particularly, you know, ornaments. I think my dream commission would be to paint a room with French arabesques. I find this style absolutely adorable, entertaining, you know, colourful. Even Floppy agrees with me.
She's getting animated at the thought of it.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure I could feature her in the painting.
That would be so sweet. Actually, do you remember you painted a beautiful pug for keeping Marie-Antoinette's window? It was just, so actually, Floppy would be a great
Floppy would be
subject.
Would be great. So yes, I think there are just so many schools of painting that you know, I read a lot about, and I look at so many pictures, and every single day I discover something new.
Forever learning and pushing yourself.
Yes, and I definitely would like to you know, paint something
Yeah, I guess that's the beautiful thing is, again, because you can paint on canvas, on paper, on panels, like, you know, things, you can even have furniture sent to you and you paint directly on the furniture. Your panels can be inserted into paneling, into moulding. You know, your canvas can be installed by others onto ceilings, walls, etc. So even if you're not, you know, and you have done a lot of projects where you're going to site, but also there's a world of possibilities from here. With things then being installed.
Yes, absolutely, and it's very convenient for the client as well, because that means that, you know, once they decide to move on, they can always take my artwork with them to the next, you know, abode.
And actually also in some ways it can be quite useful with managing site work, because if you're doing decorative painting in a room, it means nobody else can be in the room doing something else, whereas like you could be working on paneling while someone is doing, you know, you could be here doing that while somebody's working on the floor.
Absolutely,
or,
yes.
You know, etc. And so actually in terms of like timelines overlapping for a project, that can be quite a neat solution.
I know,
just
and
with
it's
my
always
interior
tricky.
designer thinking cap on.
Yes, it's always tricky. I'm sure you are aware of how tricky it can be.
Yeah, when timelines are challenging, then it's nice to have some other options.
Yeah. I do have to say that I always try to be as flexible as possible and, you know, tolerant of other trades present on various job sites.
If they mess up your work.
Except, yes.
But actually that is a thing that, you know, does happen is, you know, you go in, you do your work, someone else comes in, they might scuff something, you might. And I think most projects you probably end up having to allow for, you know, maybe a day at the end when you come back and you have to sort of do touch-ups and things. It's, you know, but the interior designer has to bear that in mind as well and allow time for that.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But I think it's natural, you know, like, you know, you always, I think especially with art, with painting, sometimes you just need a set of fresh eyes, you know, to be able to spot something. So I do tend to go back and forth for some time after finishing a project. Not just to touch up, but sometimes, you know, to add things. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful. I think, well, I hope we've definitely given a good introduction to decorative painting. It's, you know, it's a field that although I'm not a decorative painter myself, I think because I've worked for a decorative arts workshop and for someone who is a decorative painter, I feel like I'm quite passionate about that. And, you know, I've seen how it can really transform a space and make it bigger, smaller, different, you know, all of these things.
Absolutely.
And just feel so ornate. And so I'm really grateful to you for taking the time to, you know, take us step by step and dive into your world.
Well, it was absolute pleasure, Eleanor. Thank you so much, and thank you.
Links to Magda's Instagram below, so follow along for more behind the scenes of her work and country walks with Floppy. If you have any questions about decorative painting, please leave them below and I'll do my best to answer them or get Magda's input if I can't. Thank you for watching. It means a lot, especially as at the moment this channel is entirely self-funded. So please spread the word. Like, share and subscribe. See you next week.
My dream commission would be...
It is actually best for the microphone.
Floppy.
She's so funny.
She's wagging her ears.
You are just... You're so funny. She just like woke up and all of a sudden she's like,
oh my gosh, you're here! You're here!